just drive you where you want to go. So we're driving, I get all the way to Broadway, and she hadn't told me to turn. So I said, am I going right? She said, yeah. I said, well, where do you live? She said, by the church. So that let me know that I took on more than I wanted to do. So I said, well, there are a lot of churches off Union Avenue, MLK. If I drive back up, I told her to look for landmarks, and I'll turn, and we go. So we're driving, we drove all the way down to Lombard. She didn't say anything. So I said, all right, she was on Killingsworth, she was on MLK going south. The next busy street is Alberta. So I turned down Alberta. I said, anything familiar? She said, no. Well, while we were driving, I noticed that she had on a medical bracelet.
Oh.
So I said, is that your name? I said, where'd you get the bracelet? She said, her son got it for her. So I looked at it and had her name on. I said, are you a so-and-so? She said, yeah. So her address was on it. So I took her to her house, and when I got there, I got out the car and went around the car to open the door for her, and these youngsters came out the house yelling and berating this woman who must have been in her 80s, late 80s. And I'm thinking, they're saying things like, we told you not to leave the house. There you do it, you're doing it again. We tell you not to leave the house and you just walk off. And these are kids. So just as she was getting out of the car, her son drove up. So I went up to him, I said, listen, I found your mom down on Killingsworth by herself, and she didn't know what she was doing. So, and I told him, I said, these kids are really mean to her. So I dropped her off and left. About 3 months later, there was a little article in the newspaper, a woman gets hit by a cab. And I read it was the same woman. And it just made me feel like, there's more that can be done to make people think about people around them. Mm-hmm. And that started the thing in the schools. And we had a kid at Jefferson High School. We give him the camera, give him the tape recorder. He went home, he came back, and all he had was the tape recordings, an hour-and-a-half tape, and one picture. So his story was, and this goes to show you how much these folks want to talk. He said that his friends had come over and they wanted to play basketball. So he wanted to go, but he wanted to get this done. He said he asked her one question, and she spoke for an hour and a half. He had to stop her so he could turn the tape over. For an hour and a half, she talked. I said, that's great. What I want you to do is give him another roll of film. I want you to take this whole roll of film of your great aunt. It was his great aunt. And it was a weekend. He didn't come back to school that Monday. He didn't come Tuesday. So I asked the teacher, where was he? And she said he was sick. So he came back to school a couple days later. I said, I'm glad you're feeling well. He said, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, the teacher told me that you were sick. He said, well, I haven't been sick. I said, well, I missed you. You didn't come back. You weren't here Monday. He said, well, when I went home, they took my great aunt to the hospital, and she died in the hospital. So he didn't get to ask those questions or take more pictures. But he had this hour-and-a-half tape and one picture of her. And to me, that's the reason I do what I do. Because if we don't reach out, we miss out on so much. And it's, does my heart sad that we don't take advantage of these things. Like, you all should know what your history is. You should know, about your grandfather. You should know about your grandmother and their siblings, So anyway, the guards are here, so I guess